We say it's a global problem, but it has to be a local solution. And the reason I say that is I've had just the honor and privilege of traveling the world, and we've done some really stupid things with technology.
We can get involved into all this noise. We can get involved into what it takes for us to be distracted by the role that technology could play. But we can also be much more thoughtful and much more empathetic today, right?
But you see all these kids like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? You get the same answer from them. I want to be a doctor or a teacher, because they're the only professionals that those kids know. Put in a digital world for them and come back a year later, and you know what you find? I want to be a scientist. I want to be an astronaut. I'd like to learn more about engineering or robotics. And the subject is like, all of a sudden this world just opens up to these kids.
Welcome back to the Future Human Experience. I'm very excited for this episode. I have not only a wonderful friend, but a fantastic leader, not only in our local community, but in our global community as well. Dan Gutwein, CEO of N50. Welcome to the Future Human Experience.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. It's good to be here. Good to hang out with you again. It's been a long time,
I know.
Man. We've known each other for a long time, but it's been a while since we've hung out. For sure, it's good to see you, man.
We have, Dan, and what I love about not only the work that we've done together, but also how we had an opportunity to connect working in the tech sector. But it was through that friendship and through that partnership that we got to share what we really care about. And I love to see the work that you're doing right now with N50. Can you share with our audience today, what does N50 do and the impact that it continues to make today in the 21st century?
Yeah, and before I do that, congrats on all your success too. It's kind of fun to see you in this environment instead of in the tech environment that we were so used to for so long. But no, thanks for having me. And we're excited about the N50 project. And so the N50, just so everyone knows, it stands for the next 50%. So when we started this effort, there were roughly about 50% of the world wasn't participating in the digital world. Now that's down into probably the low 40s now, but we're not going to change the name. We really like the N50 project. But you've got about 3.1 billion people roughly, that aren't participating in the digital world. It does not mean they're not connected, right? We've done a phenomenal job of dropping connectivity there, and I would argue that there's not a spot on the planet you probably can't put like a LEO Starlink or something like that and connect people. Sure. But you have this digital poverty gap around, can I afford to use it? Do I know how to use it? Literacy is a massive issue that we deal with every day. And then what are the applications that really enrich the human experience in these really rural communities sometimes, Eric, that enrich their lives kind of as those local communities define it, right? Not as we in the Western world define it, but what really enriches their lives and can make it better. And so that's what we're all about. And we've put together a coalition now of about 245 global partners.
Wow.
We're a big fan of this is not, a single company problem. Yes. This is not a single government problem. This is really a global kind of problem that we're trying to go solve. And so we invite companies to jump in and participate, roll up their sleeves. We say anyone can add value, or anyone can be part of the N50 if they add some value, and everyone does. Yeah. But we do require people really just in companies, honestly, to, we say you got to check your logos and your egos at the door, right? This isn't about, promoting us or what we do. It's about really truly helping people on a local level.
I love that. And Dan, going back to that perspective of local level, right? Yeah. One of the things I learned early on when N50 was being formed was it wasn't just a project out there to say exactly what you're saying. Hey, I want to put my logo here. I want to put my logo there. We're going to solve the world's most deepest challenges by us getting involved. It was more about how do we bring the community into these conversations? How do we work there at the local level, them raising their hands, participating in these conversations, because they know their problems better than anyone else, right? They know the challenges of their community and what have you. And N50 was just there to be that, either that connector or to socialize the challenges a little bit more, elevate that conversations a little bit more. Can you share with us a little bit more about why has it been important to work at the local level versus a top-down approach?
Yeah, well, it's a great question too. I mean, a top-down approach does not work at all. We say it's a global problem, but it has to be a local solution. And the reason I say that is I've had just the honor and privilege of traveling the world, and we've done some really stupid things with technology. I'll be honest, I have personally, and I can take you to parts of the world where we put computer labs in that are now probably holding down paper because people don't know how to type or utilize them. But when you get into the local level, you really kind of learn what are the local challenges and problems that they really kind of want to kind of work on and fix. And technology isn't a fix-all, solution. There's pieces of it that can be implemented in certain, use cases and communities that to enrich their lives. But I can't define that. You can't define that. Sometimes we don't even speak the right language, right? And certainly don't have the cultural background for that. And I can give you a million different examples of this. But when we think about, and again, this is what we're also very into. Like once the technology is in place, is growing a group of local entrepreneurs to actually help develop what solutions will run in that technology. And so. There's a lot of creative things out there, and it's not just about, I got online so I can watch the latest, streaming video or Netflix special or whatever. Not that that's wrong, but it's about more than that. And we have applications now where, we got farmers flying drones over, coffee plantations and fields, and then instantly throwing it into like an AI inference model that'll tell them here are the hot spots, the dry spots, and it produces better yields. So what's better than that, right? What farmer wouldn't want better yields? We have applications, speaking of the agricultural kind of vertical that we focus on, we have applications where farmers just want to know, hey, what's the latest price of maize, right? Now, why do you want to know that? Because they're getting ripped off. And buyers want to know, hey, what's my, what does the yield look like? How do I plan my routes more efficiently? Those are pretty cool use cases for technology, but you're not going to solve those in Arizona or anywhere in the Western world. You've got to get in the local community to say, what needs do you really have? And it can be as simple. We just opened up a lab in Guadalajara about a month ago. It was about a 40-station lab at a little elementary school there. And we asked them, hey, what's the biggest need that you have? Well, they lost their English teacher. So we got an English as a second language software program for the kids, and they use it every day. So those are the kind of things we really kind of focus on. And from there, if technology is benefiting their community, right, we firmly believe that, and we've seen this work too, that they'll continue to develop and create technologies that will continue to benefit their community using the stuff that you put into place. And so, you're not saying, here's our model, go take it and use it. You're really looking at it from a local level, saying, what do you need and how can technology help?
Yeah. And Dan, and now that we're we're recording this in 2025, there's been a lot of conversations more recently about how we are working as global communities, right? There's a conversation about even how USAID has played a role in the positive, bad and ugly of how we're engaging the global community. Can you share with us a little bit more your perspective of how the USAID, either direction or history or even moving forward, how has that impacted the work that you've been doing in N50? And what should our audience know a little bit more? I mean, what are some of the myths about USAID and this work?
Yeah. I mean, this is going down probably a little bit of a controversial kind of path, and I have opinions on it, right? So I don't want anyone in your audience to think that, my opinions are fact and it's the same thing everywhere. But I can share from my experiences, right? There's so much good that has come from, however long it's been, 50 plus years, I guess, of USAID being in existence and the dollars out there. So there's a side that says, my gosh, you're killing this aid that's going to these places. But then there's also this side that I've experienced too, which you're seeing exposed, through the media of a lot of just, I would call, inefficient use of funds. I'll be nice by saying that, right? I won't call, point to corruption, but I mean, Eric, there's, we've been involved in work. We've had some USAID funding. And we've been involved in work with USAID funding where, one example, we were probably number 4, number 5 in line from an agency perspective, actually doing the work.
Wow.
And by the time it gets down there, I mean, a small, little NGO like ours, I mean, you can hardly keep your head above water doing work that should be X amount, but it became Y because everyone's kind of like managing it. And that kind of stuff's got to get out of the way. That's not a good efficient use of anyone's funds. The lab we did in Guadalajara, I won't give you the exact dollar amounts, but we did it for about a tenth of what I've seen other NGOs do computer labs for. Because we're just on the ground getting things done with local communities and local volunteers. And I'm not saying that's the right model and the only model, but there's been a lot of craziness in the NGO world. It's not kind of cool right now to be running an NGO where before they're like, oh my God, run this great NGO. And now it's like, ooh, run an NGO. And people automatically think, oh my gosh, you're corrupt. I can assure you, we're not paying people ridiculous salaries. I know an NGO, and all this stuff is public, by the way. I mean, your audience can go search any 990 form you want. and find out exactly what everybody makes, where the money goes. And I do this often, right? Because I want to benchmark, are we doing the right things? Are we paying our people the right salaries? Are we, putting the right amount into the field and into our projects? And you'll find NGOs that have $300+ million in liquid assets on their balance sheet, and I have a hard time. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, but I have a hard time. Like, are you really passionate about your cause if you're sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars in cash? Go do something, right? And so, there's some NGOs that really make it difficult in today's world to really, quite frankly, survive. And we've been through the mill, man. We had to lay off about 60% of our staff.
Oh, wow.
Because of reduction in funding, reduction of future projects that we were counting on. And then, we've played extremely well in the corporate world and got some phenomenal corporate partners. But now you find all the big folks that relied on the USAID funding directly now into that space too. And it is a finite amount of resources, right? So every day we get up and just try to do the right things, keep our focus on, in the world that we're in, Eric, it's in any NGO world, there's this, you can focus upwards, what I call on kind of the money folks, the people that can generate funds. You can focus down on the people that you're helping. I quite frankly love working on the lower level there with the people we're helping and really keeping it, in a perspective and kind of what you're doing. And it keeps you going every single day.
Yeah.
When you kind of get out of the weird kind of like political kind of quagmire of, that world, and it gets very competitive up there. All these NGOs, running after these few funds, and one of my buddies, he's a CEO of a large NGO, and he said, it's a little bit weird. He's like, you go to these events and, these big organizations, they have to bring in the rich people and the celebrities, and all the NGOs want to go meet the rich people and the celebrities, and then brings in all the NGOs, and it's like everyone's chasing the same dollar. It's just a weird thing. And I love, like, what keeps me going every day is, the chance we go out and we could open up a new lab for a community at a school and see the kids and that, their potential. And I'll give you one example. And you can do this over and over again, and the experiment repeats itself. Is if you go to these communities beforehand, I love doing this, right? When you're kind of planning it out, and you have someone go do it to make it more efficient. But you sit down with these kids, like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? You get the same answer from them. I want to be a doctor or a teacher, because those are the only professionals that those kids know, right? Put in a digital world for them and come back a year later, and you know what you'll find? I want to be a scientist. I want to be an astronaut. I'd like to learn more about engineering or robotics. And this stuff, just like all of a sudden this world just opens up to these kids. And that's the kind of stuff that really keeps me going every day.
Dan, that resonates with me a lot, right? One of the things that also I was very passionate about N50, and I shared with the board, I remember when the organization was starting up, was that I felt like I was an N50 kid. Right? Because I was that kid in Ecuador in the 1990s. I got the very first computer lab in my school, and I was one of the first classes to walk in. And that sense of the world opening up, and the sense of the barriers that, at that time, the 20th century had been put in place either in our communities or in our different countries, I felt like they were starting to go down because of technology. And I love that not only this work is impacting the next generation of that, but it was through that work or through that experience that inspired me to be an engineer one day. I didn't know what an engineer was. I had no idea what this world was about, because you're right. I would always answer the question based on what I saw and meeting in my community.
Absolutely.
So
and look at you now, Eric. Right? I mean, it's just awesome.
With that said, Dan, you've been both in the private sector now. You shared with us a little bit of the world that you've been navigating in the public sector as well, and leading nonprofits. And just to clarify, NGO is non-government organization.
Absolutely,
correct?
Yeah. It's a nonprofit.
Nonprofit, exactly.
Call it what you want.
Right, fully transparent, everything online. With that said, what are some of the lessons that you would like to share today with the audience that, coming from the private sector, going into the nonprofit sector, what either has been like an aha moment for you, or maybe what is a myth that you're like, man, if I knew this in the private sector, I would either support nonprofits a little bit differerently or work with them a little bit differently because of this.
So before we go there, I wanted just to comment on something you said about your experience growing up as a kid in Ecuador, and you got the first computer lab. By the way, computer labs are making a comeback. Just so you know this, okay? So, and this is just observation that I've seen in some of the things that we're doing too. It's like we did such, look, we responded to a crisis by giving everyone these Chromebooks. I love Chromebooks, by the way. I don't want to say anything badly about anybody. They're a great partner. We give everyone a laptop, everyone a Chromebook. It's like, okay, go off and do your classes online. Kids don't know how to type, right? And so if all we're teaching them is launch this URL and go do your classes, are we really teaching them how to use technology in the new world? And so we're seeing kind of a comeback of the old-fashioned in-school computer lab that has a dedicated classroom that you go into almost like your science class, right? And you're doing experiments, but you're learning typing and coding and computers and robotics and stuff like that. And I'm pretty excited about that because, I mean, quite frankly, you know, and I won't share the data, but you can look at the data as far as what do kids use their little notebooks we did this one-on-one thing for? Well, they do their lessons and then they just, you know, they're watching videos and doing all kinds of other crazy things, right? And, you know, you're really teaching them technology for that. So I'm super excited about the comeback of the computer lab itself, right? And, you know, it's not an or, it's an and. You can have these, you know, mobile devices and laptops that you actually take out in one-on-one. And you can also have a place where you go for instruction and tutoring of how to actually utilize it and do this. So, all right, back to your question.
Back
to your question. What have I learned differently between the public, you know, versus the NGO stuff? Let me tell you, I will say this, like, this is the hardest job I've ever undertaken in my life. I had no idea it was going to be like this. And you can say, oh gosh, great timing, right? You come into this and all of a sudden, you know, this whole NGO world just blows up and people are like, oh my gosh, you know, it's you know, there's no more funding. We're ripping the rug out from under you and you're laying off people and trying to navigate and do good things in the world. It's freaking hard, man. It's hard to do it. And that's why I say if you continue to focus on the people that you're really working with and in that level, man, it just makes it worthwhile every day. I work 10x longer hours, more details all the time, you know, trying to navigate this. You know, and then, you know, working for a large company too, Eric. I mean, there are things, you know, I never worried, like, am I gonna be able to make payroll? You know, this quarter. I apologize, my watch is going crazy here. I just want to make sure it's, you might say that, like, it may think I've fallen or something, technology, right? You can edit all that out. But like you come back, like, and you know, working for a big company, I was like, oh, I'm gonna make payroll today. You know, it's like you submit your budgets, you get your people, your expenses, and you kind of go run your business. If it doesn't work out, you know, it's not like, okay, we're gonna go fire everybody. Maybe you should. But in our world, if you know, we have a lot of what I call grant-funded positions, and if it doesn't work out, we can't keep people. It's really a challenge, but a good challenge to go run, and it flexes a lot of muscles in you, you know, to try to get things done. There's also a lot of what I would just call kind of a cool, liberating kind of perspective too, right? You know, when you go out with a nonprofit, because like I said, if you keep your focus on your mission and on your cause. There's so much noise that goes on around you. It kind of helps you just kind of tune out that noise, right? It's just noise I don't really care about. I'm going to focus on helping kids get online in a good fashion, you know, responsible way. And the one thing I learned about the nonprofit space, though, is and I never expected this. It's actually like highly competitive. You know, I never expected this either. And I kind of got to the point where, like, you know, if our nonprofit, if we have to feel like we have to compete, because there's limited funds, right? I mean, you get a grant that comes out and it might be for X amount of dollars. You might have hundreds of organizations applying for that grant. And it gets competitive. And I don't necessarily like that part of it. I'll be honest with you, I really don't, because most of these organizations are actually doing some good things. There's some ones out there I would never give a penny to, and just go look at their 990 form, right? I know organizations that are paying their CEOs multi-millions of dollars to go help people. Okay, great. And I'm not saying that's wrong. But you know, if it's a ridiculous amount of percentage and they're not able to go help people, it would be a little off of mission. But it does get highly competitive, which is really kind of weird. And I always try to focus on, and I believe this, and this is a different perspective too, but every nonprofit in the world, like, your end goal should be to go out of business.
Yes,
right?
I love that.
Solve the problem and move on. But what you find is like in this nonprofit world is you have these organizations that create these massive structures and in some cases tens of thousands of people, and you have to almost kind of continue to go find other problems to go solve to keep the monster alive in some cases. And I don't think that was ever really the intent. Probably if you go back to who's the founder of that organization, it's like, oh, I just wanted to go help this kid or help this community or help this school or do clean water or clean the environment, whatever the case happens to be. And so we always keep that as a perspective too, that our end goal is always, I should be looking to put myself and the entire organization out of business, right? Because we solved the problem. And I think good people will always rise above that and go find other things to go do. But it's an interesting world.
No, it's a great perspective, Dan. That's one of the things I when I join boards of nonprofits, that's one of the first questions I ask is, I said, what are you doing to make sure you don't exist in the next 10, 15 years? Yeah. And it most of the time, it really concerns them. It freaks them out. They're like, who are we interviewing to be part of this board? That doesn't want our board to exist. True. But I love that, maybe that's the way I need to ask it now, right? It's like, how are you working on disrupting yourself, right? Yeah. And at the end of the day, not only how we do this work, but then how do we also have conversations about either the systematic challenges, the cultural challenges, the historical challenges, right? That led us to the situation that we're in today, either in our communities, either with our neighbors or around the world. With that said too, Dan, one of the things that resonated with me too, that you shared was that we are in this era of a lot of noise. But I also believe that we're also in this era of a lot of signal. And I think organizations like N50 is an example of that. Like the N50 project example of a lot of signal that's happening around the world. Like if you go to your website today, you could see the projects that are happening around the world. Yeah. Not only that are active today, but that y'all led several years ago. You could find signals of organizations that are doing fantastic work around the world, but it's also very noisy as well. And so my encouragement, not only to our audience, but to folks that are listening to this conversation is look for those signals. Look for those signals because they are out there. These are either organizations that are doing this work in the community or organizations that have shared similar missions that you might have. And so my recommendation is, even though we have a world with a ton of noise and the noise will get louder and louder, but I truly believe the signal will be even much more powerful in the future. Yeah,
but I agree with you, by the way, and everything. And hopefully we're giving the right signals. You know, I mean, and there's lots of that's not even on our website, but we'll open probably 6 brand new labs in the next 45 days. Couple in Kenya, Zambia, Ghana, Indianapolis, a couple other places, and you'll see those as we kind of open them. And we do them pretty quickly, right? We're efficient. We use local volunteers. Our organization represents now over 1 million tech volunteers, and we use those wherever we possibly can. Hey, but going back to your point about noise, though, the one place that's not making the noise are the people you're actually going and serving and helping, right? It's kind of interesting, and I think people ask hey, what's the biggest benefit of bringing 3 billion people online? And so from a public kind of corporate perspective, you're opening up brand new markets for people, and we want to commercialize as many of those solutions as possible for our partners, and that's one of our objectives, right? Is to see our corporations successful in our organization. But at the same time, you're also opening up voices, right? That can actually, I think, provide a lot of value. Into some of the challenges we may see in the world, and when you work with these communities and you work with these kids, particularly in some of the physicians in some of these rural areas, man, it's like, you're talking about the human experience, right? And I always try to look at it through their eyes as well. And this is never about me or about our organization, right? I just, that's why I just want it to be about the people we're helping, but you're giving them a voice, and if we don't do that, I don't know, the only analogy I can think of is back to maybe your high school days where you're, kind of cruising through the hallways and there's this cool group of people, that are always going out together and hanging out and communicating. And then there's a couple people over here that no one's listening to and no one's including. And, people, from a human perspective, I think we're all kind of created for relationships and communication and stuff like that. And these kids that I meet with, man, they just want to be seen. They want to be known. They want to be valued. They want to be heard, and I'm excited to bring them into the conversation. Maybe not the noise, but the conversations that were happening. to see maybe how they can, provide value even to us.
Yeah.
Because we're not listening to 3 billion plus people right now. They're not able to give us their ideas, and they're pretty darn creative people.
Yeah.
Eric, I spent, back in December, I had an amazing privilege. I was over in Kenya and at this conference, and the conference was, it was okay, but wasn't brilliant, right? But afterwards I had about 24 hours, and so I went to visit this school that kind of popped up on my radar, and they wanted a computer lab, right? Well, I didn't realize this. It was actually in the Kibera slum, which is the largest slum in Africa. And it's the largest slum in Africa, the 3rd largest in the world. And just an amazing group of people, right, that really have nothing. And so I went to the school, and it's not conducive for a computer lab. There's giant holes in the roof, and so on. But it's actually below, it's a community school, so it's for kids that can't afford to go to like a government school, a public school, to pay a few dollars, for uniform and tuition. So they go to this community school, and it has about 200 plus kids in it, half a dozen, 10 teachers, all volunteers. But anyway, I was able to spend just kind of my day with the community, right? And just sitting and just hanging out with people. And what blew my mind is I'm sitting there with 6, 7, and 8-year-old kids, and trust me, hundreds of them.
Yeah.
They're speaking beautiful English, right? Beautiful English. They speak, a tribal language, Swahili, English, multiple languages. Wow. Some of the most intelligent kids I've ever met in my life. And you're saying, okay, yeah, but you can't get online. I don't want to listen to you. I do, right? Yeah. And that was like one of the best days of my life, just hanging out there.
So closing that digital poverty gap, or having this conversation about digital poverty is not only going to be addressing some of the biggest challenges today in the 21st century, but it's going to probably be unlocking so many wonderful opportunities for not only those communities, but for the communities that are serving them, right? All these industries.
So, I want to come back to like this local level, right? And how do you solve problems on like a local level? I'll give you one example. When I was in the Kibera slum back just before Christmas, we went to visit this school, and so I asked my host who lived in the slum itself. I actually got to go hang out in their house, and it was just an amazing experience. I was like, what else does the community need? Right? I don't come and say, hey, look, here's a computer lab. This is great. You don't have any power? No problem at all.
Right.
Good luck. I mean, what else does it need? And instantly my mind went to things like, power, connectivity, chairs, tables, and stuff like that. And my host was this amazingly beautiful lady. Her name was Vivian, and her friend Brian hosted me and kind of drove me through. And I said, what does the community need? Like before we go in there, like tell me like what's the biggest challenge of the community? What keeps kids from learning and engaging? And she said, do you want to know? I'm like, yeah, of course. So she took me by a local grocery store, a supermarket on the way in. And we ended up buying, and this is just the most bizarre thing, like you would never think this from the Western world going over there. We ended up purchasing every single sanitary pad in that entire store, hundreds of them, to give to the young ladies because the girls won't go to school because of something as simple as that. Never thought about that before, right? That wouldn't have entered my mind. Yeah. Like, oh, we need to go buy some sanitary pads. And, but think about it, right? You're in the slum, basic hygiene necessity and need, and you won't go to school, X amount of time because of this issue, very solvable problem.
So Dan, would you say that digital poverty is a lagging indicator of some of the other human needs that we have and that we've always had? It's just that the digital poverty gap is now something that's present because it's present for us, right? That we see either in our schools, in our immediate communities, but the needs, the human needs that we've had in other countries are still the same ones that were the needs before. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I still think there's an argument that, the digital participation, kind of thread weaves its way through the entire vertical hierarchy of like Maslow's needs, right? But even just this whole, like, I want to be accepted and heard and listened to, it's a common human need, right? And so I think, kind of on that level, digital plays in all of that. By the way, we found this. We did an amazing project with some refugees with when the Ukraine-Russia conflict broke out 3 years ago. It was our first project ever that we did. And we found that, like, I mean, think about it. Someone's waiting at a border for sometimes up to 18 hours across. The first thing is I want to charge my phone. These are connected people, right? Very digitally savvy folks. I need to connect my phone, it's dead. I need to get on Wi-Fi. I need to make a phone call back home. Then it's like, okay, basic needs. Where do I find food, clothing, safety, right? For me and my kids. And so we were able to do all of that by providing applications. We did a mobile project for, we put 14 18-foot shipping containers at some really cool border crossing places for, refugees, just to be able to find food, clothing, lunch, how to exchange money. I mean, think about it. How to find a Ukrainian doctor that speaks a language that can write a prescription for my kids. So yeah, that's a little bit about very kind of human needs. There's digital solves some very basic stuff. Yeah. And again, I tell everyone, like whenever I give a talk or something to an organization, I'm like, hey, just do me a favor. Like tomorrow, just lock your phone up, turn it off, turn the computer off. See how you do throughout the day. And you cannot touch it. And then go for 2 days, right? Yeah. Dude, you're not finding your way to the airport half the time. You're still not checking in for your flight. You're not getting the seat you want. Some people are not gonna be able to pay for their meal, right? Because like, where's my phone? Yeah. And now you're kind of, starting to get into some of the world that our friends are living in every day.
Yeah, the detox is real. Dan, I mean, not only have you given us a great perspective, something to consider, something to continue to at least open up our eyes about. With that said, we like to do something fun with all of our guests too. Yeah. We ask them to come with a question you might have for me. Of course, we've known each other for years already. But anything you have a question for me today, Dan?
Yeah, you know what, Eric? I mean, you've been doing this for a while. You're the human experience, right? Yeah. The future.
Yes.
I don't know if I got that right or not. What is the future of the human experience?
For me, is that as the world gets more digitized, it gives us an opportunity to be more human.
What does that mean, though?
The key word there is opportunity, I think. We can get involved into all this noise. We can get involved into what it takes for us to be distracted by the role that technology could play. But we can also be much more thoughtful and much more empathetic today, right? What I've learned, even seeing the work of the N50 project, seeing myself as an N50 kid in the 1990s, I don't think the rest of the world would have known about that project. Yeah. Right? Today, you guys are deploying labs in the next 45 days. We'll probably know within 24 hours of those labs being deployed. Like I'm now connecting with someone in Guadalajara or in Kenya or in Indianapolis because of your work. And I think that connectivity not only creates more empathetic, it makes us more inclusive, to your point that you were sharing us early, but also makes me even think as a human being today living in the Western world, and how I could create a better human experience for them. Yeah. And so I think what I've always been very passionate about is that was the experience I had as a seventh grader, right? Which was technology came into my classroom. It was your standard computer lab that we all had to do everything the same way. Yeah. But what it did for me was it opened up my eyes to humanity, right? It connected me at that time with my family in Houston that I was disconnected from. And then when I moved back to the United States, it was that same technology that connected me back with my community in Ecuador, that they were going through a ton of transition. And so that's where I see the human experience evolving is that yes, these tools, these digital tools are there for us, but it gives us the opportunity to do more of this, right? Like us spending the last 45 minutes together, frankly, came from us using technology to connect us, right? And stay in touch with each other over the years and over the months. But so that for me is what the human experience is. It is a much more thoughtful future. I think the 21st century, I'm so bullish on humanity for the 21st century. But I'm bullish for the 21st century because of individuals like yourself, individuals that we have on this podcast, the conversations we've had about what is the role that this digital space could do to open us up as human beings.
Yeah, so it's empathy, it's connectivity, it's this human relationship.
Absolutely.
Right, is the future of kind of human stuff as well. I will say that, and I do think technology drives that. Yeah. And I'll also say, kind of on the flip side, there's also massive responsibility that comes with that as well.
Huge.
And I'm just going to give just a quick plug for a program we just launched called For Womankind, and it's amazing. So there's about 900 million plus women in low middle income countries that are getting online for the first time, and there's a massive responsibility here. So think about yourself in this. Going back to some of your early childhood days, think about, if you're a single mom out there or something like that and you make $2 a day and you get online and someone's like, oh, hey, by the way, you can make $10 a day. There's a lot of craziness that goes on there. I think there's a lot of responsibilities we roll this out to roll it out responsibly and ethically and thinking about that human. And so we actually rolled out, I'm so excited about this program. It's called For Womankind. We rolled out a one-on-one mentorship program with female tech execs and asked them to come out and mentor a young lady in a developing area that's coming online for the first time. And it's been phenomenal. I will tell you there's an imbalance. We have right now, we just launched this program, we have over 1,000 mentees online waiting for a mentor. We have about 100 mentors from our million employee groups. And so to me, that's like the easiest ask.
Yes.
If someone can't spend an hour a month talking with a young lady in a community, a female tech executive talking with a young lady in a community and reviewing their CV and what do you want to be? Giving them some ideas and helping them make sure that it's going to be responsible. And hey, that ad you saw is not what you want to click on. Those kind of things, because it happens. There's bad people in this world. If people can't spend an hour like this, the N50 is definitely not for them. Like just let them go do their thing, and that's okay too. But pretty excited about it.
So Dan, not only that, we'll have links to all that in the show notes, but tell us a little bit more about how can people connect with you? How can people connect with the N50 project? And if you have any call to action for our audience today.
Yeah, the call to action is you can go to n50project.org. There's all kinds of information there as far as what we're working on. And then there's a button on there you can't miss. It's called Get Involved. And you can get involved. Of course, we need funds to run our little organization and get that stuff there. If you're a corporation and you're interested in partnering with us, we definitely want to talk with you about that and make sure that every penny is being used as efficiently as possible to get to these kids that we're trying to help get online and also commercialize your corporate solutions. But then at the bottom, there's a volunteer thing. And a volunteer, you can get involved. We have an EdTech for all community if you're involved in education. We have one for Womankind. We're launching one for AI for all.
Awesome.
We're actually putting some really cool localized, culturally contextual design LLMs into communities that can run offline. So there's all kinds of ways you can do that. Just click the Get Involved tab and just pick your way you want to help out. We run this organization by volunteers. Keep our costs down, allows us to be the most effective way we can be.
Well, Dan Gutwein, thank you so much for being part of the Future Human Experience. And we're looking forward to not only staying engaged with N50, but hearing more about how the project continues to change the world.
Thanks, man. I appreciate your time, buddy. Good to see you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Hey, everyone. This is Eric, the host of the Future Human Experience. The reason why this podcast was created was to be a platform for others to really bring these conversations to life. So if you're enjoying this content, please like and subscribe. It will really help our channel and expose these ideas for others. Thank you.